Hi everyone, myself Dr. M. Lakshmi Prasad, working as an associate professor in the Department of Data Science in Institute of Aeronautical Engineering, Hyderabad. In this video, I'm going to discuss about what is the basic principles of data science. So when it comes to introduction part of this principles of data science, so first of all, you have to know so what is the data science and what is the purpose of the data science. So data science is nothing but an art and then science of acquiring knowledge through data, and the data science is all about how we're going to take the data and then how we're going to use to acquire the knowledge, and then how we're going to use the knowledge to do the following steps. So first thing is that making decisions, and then how we're going to predict the future and understand the past and present conditions or statements, and creating the new industries and products. So data science is nothing but art and then the science of acquiring knowledge through data. So nowadays the data science become very popular, become a data analyst or some other. So data science is nothing but all the time it is going to deal the data in order to acquire the knowledge, as well as to use the knowledge by making the following steps. So first one is through making decisions, and then the predicting the future, and then understanding the past and present, and then creating a new industries and product. So understanding the data science begin with the three basic areas. So first thing is that maths or statistics we have to be understand, and then computer programming, and then domain knowledge. So these three things we need before going to understand what the data science is. So very first thing, many of them are going to know what is the mathematics of statistics. So it is should be of equations and then the formulas to perform the analysis. So for that we need statistics part here. And while coming to computer programming, so this is the ability to use the code to generate or create the outcomes on the computer. For that computer programming is needed. And for the domain knowledge, so it going to refers to understanding the problem domain. So that is maybe medicine, finance, and then social science and so on. So for that we have to understand statistics. So statistics is the thing by make use of equations and formulas to perform the analysis of the data. And then the computer programming is the thing we can able to take to create outcomes on the computer. And domain knowledge is the thing we should be able to understand the problem domain. So it should be the medicines, finance, and then social science. So if I'm going to construct this Venn diagram, so this should be the substantive expertise, and this should be the knowledge of maths and statistic structure or statistic knowledge, and then we need hacking skills of this. So the intersection part of the some mathematics and statistics knowledge and hacking skills able to cover this machine learning part and some part of the data science also. Whereas if I'm going to take the hacking skills and then substantive expertise, so we should also cover some data science part and some part of this maths and statistic knowledge and subjective expertise. It should be useful for the traditional research and then some part of the data science. So this should be the data science should able to cover all this hacking skills and then mathematics and statistic knowledge and then substantial expertise. So in data science field, it is important to understand the different flavors of data for several reasons. The basic classifications of the data will be of different types, like structured and then unstructured data. Sometimes it may be also be referred as organized or unorganized data. And other thing is that the qualitative and then quantitative data. So normally the flavors of the data will be of different types. So first thing is that structured data, where the data is going to be arranged in some specified structure. And then unstructured means where you have to not follow any kind of structure for organizing the data. So sometimes this structured data should also be called as organized one, and then unstructured is going to be called as unorganized one. So this the quality, and then the next one is that the qualitative and then quantitative. So the quantitative in the sense where you can able to consider the data where it should also contain some numerical values. Whereas this qualitative data we should not have, that should we don't have any numerical values, right? So the qualitative data means where we can able to maintain this numerical values. Quantitative data no numerical values, and quantitative data having numerical values. So what is the organized data is the thing. So basic types of data will be organized, unorganized, and then qualitative and quantitative. So organized in the sense it should able to refers to data that is going to be sorted into a row or column structure. So whenever there should be every row should represent a single observation, and the column should represent the characteristic of that observation. Whereas unorganized data means where the data is in very free form, and then usually the text or raw or data or maybe audio or signal that may be passed further to become organized. That should be the organized data. So the organized data means where the data is going to be sorted either in the form of rows and column structure. So where every row represents a single observation, and then column represent the characteristics of that observation. So when it comes to this unorganized data, so the data should be where you can able to represent in free form. So usually that may be a text or audio signal that may be passed further to become organized. So the data what I'm getting should be organized. That should be translated to organized way. Structured versus unstructured data. So the structured data means where the data can be. So next one is the structured versus unstructured data. So the structured data means it should be a thought of observations and then characteristics. So normally this structured data is going to be organized using a table method. Whereas this unstructured or unorganized data should be an excessive free entity and does not allow any standard organization of hierarchy. Okay, so the structured data, unstructured data. Structured data means where we can able to thought of observations and then characteristics. Then we have to go for the structured one. Whereas this unstructured means where the data exists as a free entity and does not allow any standard organization hierarchy. But in structured data, you usually organize in the form of tables only, so which may be consists of rows and then columns. Some of the few examples that could help you to differentiate this tree is that so most of the data exists in the text form, so including server logs and then Facebook posts, everything, right? So that should be comes under unstructured one. And then scientific observations, so which should be recorded by the scientists, so are going to be kept in very neat and unorganized format. That should be structured one. So they should this to able to differentiate this what is the structured and unstructured one. So normally in server logs, the data will be on some other format, not maintaining any structure. And Facebook posts also are not having any kind of format we have to maintain. So that's why these data will should comes under unstructured one. Whereas the scientific observations, normally the researchers or scientists are going to take some data based on the observations. So those observations should be kept in very neat and organized structured way. Well, coming to this quantitative and then qualitative data, the quantitative data, which can be described using numbers and then basic mathematical procedures, so including addition are possible on the set. Whereas qualitative data means the data cannot be described using numbers and basic mathematicians. So the data that is going to be generally thought of being described using natural categories and language. So the quantitative data and qualitative data. So here the quantitative data should be described using numbers and then basic mathematical procedures like addition, subtraction, multiplications are going to be set on the data one. So whereas this qualitative means the data cannot be described using numbers and the basic mathematics. So normally example the religion. So if I'm going to take the religion, maybe either Hindu or Muslim or Christian or Sikh like this. So it should not contain any numerical value, though that should become under qualitative one. So if I'm going to consider this quantitative, suppose I'm going to take height. So height may be measured in centimeters and weight is measured going to be kgs like this. So example, so I'm going to take some coffee shop data. So just going to be process some observations of the coffee shop in some major city. So which is going to be have 5 descriptions or 5 descriptors or characteristics. So if I'm going to take the data is from the coffee shop, so the name of the coffee shop. So what should becomes? It should be the qualitative data. Similarly, if I'm going to take revenue, so normally the revenue should be in terms of dollars. So far, that's why it should. I'm going to take it as a quantitative. And zip code should also be qualitative, and average monthly customers. Then it should be quantitative. Let it be some 12 or 40 or it may be 500 like this. And country of coffee origin again it should be. So if I'm going to take this coffee shop as an example, so for that coffee shop, I take 5 descriptors here or 5 characteristics. So first thing is that the data. So the data for that name of the coffee shop that should belongs to qualitative one, and since it does not contain any measurements like this. And next one is that revenue. So the normal revenue should be in terms of dollars. So it should be quantitative, and then descriptors and zip code should be qualitative, and then average monthly customers and country of coffee origin. So before going to see this, what the data actually means is that, so the data is nothing but an observation or evidences about the social world, and normally the data should come from the plural of that one is data. So it should be of either quantitative or then qualitative. And let me differentiate this. What should be the data and information? So the term data and information is going to be interchanged. However, the term should not have distinct meanings. So the data is nothing but facts, events, transactions which have been recorded one. So whereas this information, so the information data that have been produced such a way that it should be useful to the recipient, and the input raw material from which is going the information is being processed, and information that is going to be processed in some way to form the information. This should be the information. So that is the difference between the data and information. So what is the facts and events and transactions which have been recorded? That should be the data. So the data that has been produced in such a way that should be useful to the recipient, that should be the information. Nature of data. So normally this data is going to be classified into two types: qualitative data and then quantitative data. So if this one should be defined based on the attributes, whereas this one is going to be defined based on the variables. So then normally the research studies in behavioral science are mainly concerned with characteristics or traits, and the tools are going to be administered to quantify these characteristics, but all the traits or characteristics cannot be quantified. So what is the qualitative data or attributes in the sense? So it may be a characteristic or traits for which the numerical value cannot be assigned in nothing but a qualitative, or it may be an attribute. So normally this should be example is that gender and then motivation. Whereas this quantitative data or variables, so it should be also be characteristic or trait for which the numerical value can be assigned or called variables. So example is that height and then weight. So qualitative data means where the numerical value cannot be assigned to the attributes, whereas quantitative data means where the numerical value can be assigned to the variables. So example of this qualitative data means genders. So if I'm going to take gender or male or female, and motivation. Similarly, if I'm going to take height, it should be in centimeters, whereas weight it should be in kgs or grams, whatever it is. So what is qualitative data? So the qualitative data means there should not be any notional magnitude of size of characteristics, and this thing should be just categorized, and the data is going to be classified by counting the individuals having some same characteristics or attribute that should not be not by measurement. For example, if I'm going to take gender, it should be male or female. Disease means present or absent. Smoke means smoking or not smoking. This data can be measured in nominal and ordinal scale. Right, so the qualitative data means there should not be any notion of magnitude of the size of characteristic, and they are just categorized, and the data is going to be classified by counting the individuals having the same characteristic or attribute or not by measurement. So examples should be gender, so the gender should be male or female, and the disease should be present or absent, and smoke means not smoking or not smoking. Quantitative data. So quantitative data means where you can able to represent in the form of a number or quantity or magnitude, and should also be described in terms of numerical value, and which are going to be expressed in terms of measurements. So example is that level of hemoglobin in the blood and the number of glaucoma points and then intraocular pressure, weight, etc. So the quantitative observations is that as an individual going to be represented by number, and this data can be measured in terms of interval and ratio scale. So next one is that quantitative data. So the quantitative data means the data which can be expressed as a number or quantity or magnitude, and then it should also be describes the characteristics in terms of numerical value, and it should also be measured in terms of measurement. So example is that level of hemoglobin in the blood and the number of glaucoma points and intraocular pressure and weight. The next quantitative observation means as the individual is going to represent by number, and these data can be represented or measured in terms of interval and ratio scale. So these are the various forms of data. So normally the data should be of qualitative, and then second one is that quantitative. So the qualitative means the data should be of again two types, nominal and ordinal. So the nominal means gender, men, and hair color means blonde or brown, and ethnicity should be Hispanic and Asian. Whereas the ordinal means the first, second, and third, and letter grades are like ABC, and then economic status, low, medium should becomes under the ordinal data. So whereas this, if I'm going to take this discrete one, so the number of students in the class and number of workers in the company and number of runs in baseball game, that should be the discrete data. If I'm going to take this continuous one, so the height of children and then the square footage or two-bedroom house and speed of the car, it comes under continuous data. So like this, the data is going to be classified into various forms. So first thing is that nominal one, so that should be gender, woman or men, and hair color, that should be blonde or brown, should comes under nominal one, and ethnicity should comes under nominal one. So similarly, if I'm going to take the ordinal means first, second, third, letter ABC, and then economic status low, medium, high. Similarly, the types of data should comes under quantitative means discrete one and continuous one. So discrete means number of students in the class, number of workers in the company, number of home runs in baseball game. Whereas in continuous means the height of children and square footage of two bedroom and then speed of the car. So like this, I can able to classify the data into various forms. Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.